There's some little guys with shovels behind this. There's definitely a guy with a shovel at the back here. Hello, and you join me with Project Beatrix once again, but this time we're going to have a look at someone's fantastic collection of what he terms as budget classics in the middle of an estate where you would never imagine a collection of these cars being parked on his front driveway, literally. There is an array of beautiful cars in this collection. Some are classic, some are classed as modern classic, and as someone with only a couple of cars who gets stressed trying to manage a couple of cars, I don't know how other people cope, and you're gonna meet him and his collection of cars. This is Martyn's world of budget classics. Those of you may be familiar with this car on this channel, a Rover 45 CVT, indeed, a Rover 75 V6, a manual, no less.
Good afternoon, Andrew.
Welcome, Martyn. Hello, sir. Good evening. How are you?
Pleased to see you.
Always
Who would have thought we were going to get this weather, eh?
Absolutely. Boiling hot today and looking at beautiful classics. How are you, buddy?
Very good, very good. Slightly warm.
Yeah, exactly. This is a wonderful collection of classics. Really, really different, actually. Yeah, I don't know where to begin, but I think we'll begin at the youngest. As you can see, we have some very, very ancient classics. That is a very unique car, and I'll say you that. This, we all know about these, but it's actually not what you think unless you've actually identified the Van den Pla hubcaps already. Well done. This, well, we've seen a few of these, but this has got a nice little history to it. So let's start, Martyn, with the 75. We'll start from there. Okay. Right, this is Martyn's, I would say, one of your main cars, would you say?
In terms of usability, certainly gets some use, yes.
Yeah, that's great. How long have you had the car for?
Approximately 10 years.
10 years. How many miles have you done in it?
Well, when we first bought it, it would have had 72,000 on it. It's now on 90, so 18.
So not bad, considering that people don't really use the V6s a great deal because of the fuel consumption.
I mean, it doesn't mount up to a great deal of mileage. It does it over 10 years, you know, it's
yeah.
a couple of thousand a year,
yeah.
varying, you know, according to whether it's been on the road, off the road, furloughed or not furloughed, that sort of thing.
Yeah,
you know.
that's it. What colour is it?
It's royal blue. Which is
royal blue.
Yeah.
That's a really nice colour, that is. Deep blue. I think it's probably one colour that shows the classiness of a Rover 75. I love this. I absolutely love it. I mean, Martyn's going to show the interior. We've got the bullet mirrors as well. Yes, that was a very early edition. I prefer the later ones, but I can understand that is one big heavy door, that is. And yet we've got the manual gearbox, which is actually quite least seen, I would say. There's still quite a few about, but I think the automatics are preferred with the V6. But we've got, yeah, this is fake wood because it's a later car. Beautiful. You can see a lot of Rover sort of R50 styling in here. I absolutely love this car. I love the styling inside here. I don't think Rover 75s have ever kind of floated my boat as such, but this one, actually, particularly this steering wheel, wow, I love this. I absolutely love this. What I love is we've got a blanking plate, but even though this is the V6, I think we had quite a few different options there. We've got a cassette player, but we've also got a CD changer. So we've got a bit of both, which is quite strange for this time of car, really, having a cassette player and a CD player. Quite, yeah. Well, by this time, you'd have thought it'd be mainly CDs, but this is quite nice and clunky. At least it's the original, and a lot of them have been replaced over the years, but I'd like to see something like this. And obviously automatic climate control. I say you've got just circular buttons everywhere. The styling is extremely, I'd say, cutting edge. I think Ford had a lot of influence with their swerves and their curves, and I think Rover did exactly the same when they were designing the Mini R50. And these seats are absolutely sumptuous as well. The leather is just of a superb construction. They've got the piping in between. Yeah, I love these. I think visually they look absolutely amazing. But at the same time, I wouldn't necessarily say that they're a million miles away from what I've got in the 45. But, you know, each their own on that one. I think if you sit in some really badly worn seats, you'd think they were the most uncomfortable seats ever. But Rover 75 seats do look the piece, and I think they took a lot from the Rover P5 as such. Styling cues from back in the day of Rover P5s, with the way the dashboard curls back round in a sort of orchestrated line. P6s, 800s, they all have R8s even, they all have this integrated curve. Absolutely stunning. And no digital clocks here. Oh, shows you magic, Martyn. Oh, there we go. Just shut that door. And here we are, the V6, the quad cam V6. That,
only the 2 litre V6, of course.
Only the 2 litre V6 in this one.
You could
okay.
Get 2.5. Yeah.
The engine that they pretty much shoved in the 45 for a period of time. The ZS, I believe, got, I think it was the same engine, I believe. But in the 75, they're a bit congested, aren't they? Pretty much. Timing belts, have they been done?
They have indeed, yeah.
That's
a year ago.
About a year ago. With water pumps and exactly. I think it's every 6 years or so.
Yeah, 6 years.
How have you had any problems with it?
Most problems I've had have certainly not been in the engine department, so nothing under there
has
given me any trouble at all. But Rover 75s, I would say, are a little bit demanding when it comes to their suspension.
Yeah.
They tend to cry, you know, when they've done 10,000 miles. They say, honestly, I need some attention.
They're constantly needing things.
Yeah.
I've heard that from a few people, that it's not necessarily the running gear as such. This is bulletproof. It's serviced, oil, timing belt.
I've had a clutch.
You've had a clutch as well.
A dual mass flywheel. Yeah.
Oh, it's dual mass as well.
Yeah, it wasn't cheap. Wasn't cheap at the time.
No.
But, that's nearly 10 years ago now.
I mean, to be fair, on these 10 years ago, there was still decent value 10 years ago, but even a few years ago, I think the values had dropped to kind of the lowest. I wouldn't necessarily say more than you could probably pick a decent one up for £1,000 maybe.
I guess it would be pertinent to say how much I paid for this one.
Yeah.
£900.
And what an absolute bargain.
But you do have to be prepared when you need a clutch and a dual mass flywheel to spend that money again. But I would still argue that 10 years later, that feels like a decent investment, doesn't it?
Yeah, I would say so. The problem is that is exactly why people scrap a lot of these cars. 45, 75s, any car from this age, no matter if they have some suave and class. And you would say a 75 definitely has more class. I mean, I've just literally been around the car, photographing all the nice little features that you can see on your screen now. And I've done it on all these cars just now. And there's more interesting features on this 75 than any other car that I've seen, especially the 45s. I think the 45s, despite how nice they are as cars and how well proven they are on that chassis, the 75 has a lot of classy features exterior wise, which just kind of puts it above a little bit. But they have been cheap for quite a few years, and I think the problem is when you get a build up of problems. I mean, even rust is now starting to creep into the factor now. I mean, rusty subframes. You know, I think discount MG Rover spares sell them for a few hundred, and they go off the shelves within like a few minutes. You know, it's literally that bad now for them. So they have got to the point now where I think enthusiasts are the only ones that really want to keep them. I mean, you get a build up of, I mean, if your belts need doing, you've got a bit of rust underneath, you have some holes. It can happen on these, I suspect. Even though the build quality was there, I think they've all reached an age where they just need too much stuff doing. And as you said, in the suspension department, they always need something. I think that's the best way of putting it. They're never quite happy. And these ride so nicely, don't they?
It's not massively expensive work in terms of the suspension, but if you leave them, then you're not driving a car that's likely to give you satisfaction.
No.
It will feel like, you know, a 21-year-old car, which is what it is.
Yeah, exactly. And a 75, to get the best out of it, you want it to be at its very best, and that's the problem. I think the off-putting factor is, I think plenty of people have actually bought one of these and driven them probably on quite tired suspension. And I think that really takes away from actually how good they are to drive. So it's like many cars in this age, but this is not simple in some respects to actually repair. I don't think it's as simple as our 45s for a start. I think the 45, one, is quite an uncomplaining car when it comes to the suspension side of things, but also they're not like hard to repair. I think that the Honda rear end, I think the only thing we need to be aware about is train arms, and you've had the train arm bushes done on Virginia, the 45 here. So you know, guys, the 45 ZVT that we're going to come to, Virginia the Creeper, there's a reason for that. But yeah, this is a stonkily nice car. Is there anything interesting about this car that you feel you need to add there?
Well, I'll just tell you what sort of stable name this car has. So it's referred to as the Duchess.
The Duchess.
That's a rather generic, old lady kind of name.
Yeah.
Other than that, no, I mean it's not a particularly rare car.
Yeah.
As your research recently discovered.
No.
There is one component that would have been interesting, and I'm sure we would have filmed it had it been working today.
Yeah.
And that is that it has a rather funky sunblind, electrically operated. It looks really cool when it's working.
Yes.
But unfortunately today it's not having it.
That's just typical. Yeah. The car just doesn't want to work for me. It's me, isn't it? Yeah, it's got to be me. Always. This is one of 39. So we're talking about connoisseur, manual, V6. It does say it in the logbook, and you have to be very careful about which model you pick. I know the How Many Left website is rubbish. I've done my own research. There's 39 of these on the road, and they are coming down by a few every quarter from what I see. So not rare, not as rare as what we've got coming up, but getting there, I think. Right, let's go to the next one. Now here we have Virginia the Creeper. Now, what's the reason you named the car that way?
Well,
yeah.
The thing is, Andrew, and obviously you'll know this, but your viewers may not necessarily. The constantly variable transmission gearbox has some interesting traits, mainly good.
Yeah.
But one that is noticeable, particularly to people that haven't driven one before, is that when the vehicle is in drive, but perhaps at rest with your foot on the brake, it does have a tendency to be a bit like a naughty dog on a lead.
To go, it just wants to run.
It wants to creep. Now, any automatic driver will know that automatics are meant to creep.
Yeah.
But this one creeps a little bit enthusiastically, so Creeper sort of had to come into it.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
therefore, obviously, Virginia goes with that, Virginia Creeper,
Yeah.
as in the plant.
Yeah.
So it's a bit of a tongue-in-cheek reference to the fact that the characteristics of these gearboxes, whilst we have come to love them, they're not to everyone's taste.
Perfect.
But it's the connoisseur's choice.
Yeah, it is, absolutely. And I would absolutely agree with that. We just look around the car. I know we have seen this car massively before, but I didn't really go into detail. Now, what I noticed last time is these rubber strips.
Yeah.
They've got them on the front bumper, and they've got them on the back bumper. Why?
They're not preferable, are they?
No, I mean, I've got to be honest. Before you start, I've got to be honest. Until you pointed it out, I hadn't noticed.
Yeah.
I don't know why. Now I can't not but notice.
They're like the dead body in the room. You sort of step over them.
Yeah, exactly.
And they were on the car when I bought it. And of course, to remove them, whilst it could be done, I think it was just going to reveal a bit of a mess underneath. So I've not been brave enough.
Yeah, I'd say so.
Whenever I break a bumper irreparably and replace one, then clearly they will be designed out, photoshopped out of our lives, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Until then, they're kind of sadly here to stay, So unique for the wrong reasons.
It's just the sort of thing that people added onto these cars back in the day that they didn't think much of it. But probably, to be fair, that's probably a good feature, isn't it? Because people often just don't bother buying any of this kind of thing to protect your car further. So it just goes to show that I think someone was quite conscious of them smashing the car into a corner.
The first owner, I think, tried to look after the car. And whilst I bought it cheaply, one of the things I noticed about it was that at the time it didn't have many sort of body issues or defects or that kind of thing.
No.
It had other issues mechanically, which we've patiently attended to. But bodily, it was a good car when purchased back in 2010.
Yeah. Perfect. And this is a 45 CVT. Just for those who don't know this car, I'm just going to show you inside. It is an earlier 45. So we're talking on the cusp of pre-project drive, although some things may have gone, but very few things. I mean, for instance, things like this. We've got felt inside the glove compartment. We've got proper carpets. And these are really nice carpets, Martyn. I noticed these earlier. I do like that. They're actually... But did these actually come with the car, or did you add them?
I added them simply because Rimmer Brothers had got a few of them in this colour.
Yes.
The name escapes me. It might come back to me in a minute. But I thought that with the fake plastic wood, that kind of brownish colour would tie in reasonably well with the wood.
I think it does, yeah.
Naturally, I'd have kind of preferred it if they were the black ash, but you couldn't get black ash at the time. They'd sold them all. So these were at the time literally £12 for a set.
£12.
£12 because nobody wanted that colour. Hence, beggars can't be choosers, can they?
No, I don't think they can be at that price. And
so I bought 3 sets.
I don't blame you. I don't blame you. And the other feature is obviously you get a top spoiler, because being the hatch, you got that, and it's not a saloon. I think the hatch is more, it's more practical, isn't it? Really, I think you've probably found that as well.
Yeah, it's surprising how big the opening space is.
Yeah.
Undoubtedly,
Yeah.
you find.
Yeah.
With yours.
Absolutely. Rover 75 seats. Well, they're 45 seats, but we know them as Rover 75 seats.
They've got 75 frames.
Yeah, it's the frames. Yeah, it is the frames. There's slight differences between the two, but overall, pretty much the same. And we have, well, project drivers not eaten away the illuminated ignition bell. I've actually not seen one in the flesh. That's a really nice touch.
I don't think there was any project drive input on this car. I think it's the full
so
fat.
it's the full fat. Yeah. There is actually nothing missing off this car.
Yeah. Because whilst it was registered in 2001, January it was therefore obviously made during 2000, later part of 2000.
Right.
So Project Drive hadn't hit it at all, which is why you get a half decent CD player rather than one of those aftermarket.
I noticed this seat. I noticed the CD player in here. I mean, we've got, these are quite reassuringly and probably more high quality than what I've got in Beatrix. They've got the same size frame to them as well. I have these over here almost, and over here we've got obviously your dipped and your front fogs. Yeah, that's it. I love that. I just love that. So we've got compact disc, and these are quite sought after from what I've seen anyway. You've got all your digits on the clock. They're not actually known for going on these, but the wood, even though this is completely fake, it's just got an element of class that I think from what the 75 gave, I think this also gives off the same glow, but just in a more basic, mundane way, in a way. Not in a bad way, just more basic. But everything works in here, and they are a lot more simple to work on. Even these, this car has done
112,000.
112,000.
Yeah.
And it's on the original gearbox.
On a gearbox that some would say isn't really capable of doing more than 50,000. So obviously
that's absolute rubbish.
That. Yeah.
I can say so. I mean, the only excuse for me is that mine's done 50.
Yeah.
And I've just changed the fluid and got there in time probably.
Yeah.
But there's no difference. I've heard yours drive away and there's absolutely no difference. So people who say that these gearboxes are rubbish, what would you say to them?
I would say believe that if you like, because that leads to these cars being tragically undervalued, which is the cheaper living for me.
Pretty much. I think that's the way most of the Rover community roll. Yeah. I think you've just summarised Rover 45 ownership. Yeah. Cheap to the people that love them, but for those who don't, you've just made it cheaper through snobbery.
It's an elite club that not many people are party to.
No, I'm glad to be party of it. I bet you are too. Yeah. And this car is pretty much driven kind of semi-daily with this car at the moment, and not having a problem, have we?
No,
I think
it isn't pampered.
No, I can see that.
Up reasonable mileage every year, sort of 4,000 to 5,000 miles a year.
Yeah.
It's looked after as well as can be expected, but you know, it lives on the street.
Yeah.
And it shows it.
Yeah, absolutely. Right, next one. This is an introduction to all of these cars, by the way, today. It's just a brief look over, just anything interesting and detailed. We are going to be driving these cars one at a time in the future, so that's coming up, but this is a really nice collection. Now, next one, Rover 600, but not any Rover 600. It is a Rover 623 SLI on an NReg. Good grief. I don't see many early 600s this age. I mean, the paintwork, as you can say, it's in a various different states. This side is actually the better side, to be honest. There has been some home job paint going on, isn't there, Martyn?
It certainly has. I mean, to keep my collection alive,
Yeah.
At the lowest possible price point,
Yeah.
you know, necessitates not giving cars to professional body shops. So
Yes.
when things rust, as they inevitably do, you know, wings get replaced and painted in your back garden.
Yeah,
so you
exactly.
You can't expect not to notice that.
No, not at all. Not at all. It's just the way it rolls, and that's the idea of Martyn's World of Budget Classics. I mean, we've got a collection of cars here. That the problem is with car collections, as I probably imagine, you've got one income. You've got one income, and then when you add another car to an already, let's say you've got two cars and you add a third, you've got to make your money go further, and that's when you start making conscious decisions about what's important and what isn't. And I think paint, it's probably, it covers the metal up.
It's a nice to have, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Yeah,
it's a luxury.
Yeah.
It's a luxury, and it is necessary
It's a
to keep.
protective coating.
Yeah, it is.
Yep.
It is. Now, paintwork, number one, is actually not designed to make the cars look good. It's actually designed to cover the metal. It just so happens that we make them look good, and we can. So I think that's kind of the summary there. But 623. So we're talking. Is that Honda H?
Yeah, it's a H23A.
23A.
Which is the European version of the H23 engine.
Yeah.
I believe it was also to be found in European Honda Preludes.
Yeah.
And this. It's a non-VTEC engine.
Yeah.
That relies on reasonable volume to give its power.
Yeah.
And nothing else really. And I think that's one of the strengths it has, because it's really understressed.
Yeah, completely. And it's just, it is that motorway wafter.
Yeah.
How does it compare to the Rover 75, its replacement, in general?
Well, it's interesting. I've compared notes with other owners that have both got 75s and 600s.
Yeah.
They own both.
Yeah.
And we both feel that whilst the 75 has some lovely showroom qualities to it, it's a very eyeable car with all those design cues that you were saying you'd noticed in your walk around.
Yeah.
The 600 lacks some of that because it's more Honda underneath, obviously.
Yeah.
And you can see that quite obviously. It's a Honda Accord with a bit of a makeover, a
Yeah,
good makeover,
it is.
but you can't
It is.
disguise what it is. But as far as fit and finish, albeit this is an aging car, both myself and others I've spoken to actually feel that the beauty is more than skin deep on a 600.
Yeah.
And that they actually feel really well designed and screwed together.
Yeah, exactly.
And it shows itself in all sorts of silly little ways. But as a driver's car, it's not as dynamically competent as it looks.
Yes.
But it's extremely relaxing to drive on a motorway with this particular engine and gearbox configuration.
That's,
being automatic.
yeah, I'm not surprised actually. We do have the Honda, I think it's a 4-speed automatic, so Honda-matic, yeah. So I believe it's the same gearbox they'd have fitted to every Rover R8 with the Honda D series, and they kept on putting it in the 600 later on, and the gearboxes don't really fail, do they?
It's conventional. It hasn't had a fluid change in my lifetime.
No.
You can't get all of it out anyway. You can only change about a third of it.
Yes.
It would be good practice to change it at some point, but I've never seen one broken.
No, that's actually, I think I've heard of that a few times. I don't think I've ever heard of a Honda-matic breaking down. So not necessarily they need it really. That's what you want. I think there was a good period of time where people bought these over, let's say, any Rover with a K series. That's I think the big fireball, because of the head gasket issue, people would just think, do you know what, let's buy the Honda equivalent and we won't have a problem. Problem is with Honda engines is they've got a reputation for being extremely thirsty versus the K series. In this car, it was never offered with a K series. So you had the diesel version, then you had the T series. But I don't necessarily think that they would be the better options in this case. Not in this car.
Well, I think the Honda engines suffer from a efficiency perception because they're compared to the diesel models, and of course the L series diesel is exceptionally frugal.
60 miles per gallon.
You can certainly get 55 to the gallon without trying too hard.
Yeah.
Whereas you won't get much more than 31, 32 mpg out of this. But would you expect to with a 2.3 Honda? Seems reasonable to me.
Not really. I think that's exceptional fuel economy considering the size of the engine and the size of the car. I mean, we're talking about probably 1.2 tons-ish. Probably more than that, actually, to be fair, with this size of car. So not exactly talking, not light, but not heavy. But certainly there's a lot of car to drift about in.
From a budget point of view, when you're not constantly repairing your engine or other components, that buys a lot of fuel.
Yeah, it does. Just absolutely gorgeous. I mean, we've got a sports button on here as well. Is there... I didn't know there was a sport.
Yeah, it makes quite a bit of difference, even on a vehicle that is designed more for long, distance cruising rather than out-and-out performance. You can worry people at the traffic lights with that button.
That's quite interesting, actually, because I deleted that later on, I believe.
They deleted it later. As a result, it seems, from a change to the specification of the vehicle alarm.
Oh.
Which took up... There's a bulb on the dashboard that comes on when you press the sport button.
Yeah.
That little S there.
Yes.
That gets replaced on later models. The same space is taken up by a light for something to do with the alarm, like a transponder.
Okay, got you.
Recognition.
Got you.
Light, something.
And they just got rid of that and thought, do you know what? We'll just get rid of the whole thing.
Button.
I don't understand. That's weird.
Which is a pity. Yeah.
And also, just little things that I kind of notice. I mean, these feel really nice to hand. A little bit on the clunky side, but overall, and what I've amazed about here is you've got 5 whole settings for the fan speed. I mean, literally, I just tested it earlier. The difference between 1 and 2 is it's like breathing speed, and then like somebody's blowing slightly harder, and then it increases. Then I think 3, it kind of gets going a little bit, but 5, I think 4 is enough, really. You don't need 5 increments. It was a little bit too much. This is what I like as well. We've got some sort of air coming into the car symbol, and then you just press this button, and then they go the opposite way. So we've got a recirculation. So quite interesting. Got a blank for something there. We've got the original radio, a Panasonic CD changer. So we got cassette and a CD changer as well. How rare is that? I mean, this still works perfectly fine. Got a little cubby holder here. That, oh yes, that's quite nice actually. Again, sort of place to put your cigarette ashes. But to be fair, it's probably a coin tray more than anything these days. The switches are kind of what you'd expect, quite clunky, but still rather of their time. This is quite familiar to anybody with a Rover 45. Yeah, it's nice felt that actually. And the seats, I do like these seats, really, honestly. They're just classy, and I think in this tone, this light grey tone, and in a contrast to Nightfire red paintwork, works so well. This sunroof that you're going to see now, completely electric, and it works absolutely fine. No airbag at all. No, absolutely not. Unbelievable.
In fact, when these cars were introduced, you didn't even get a driver airbag.
Oh, I see. So this was this airbag was a late feature as well.
Later, yeah.
Later.
It was phased in. Yeah, the 93 cars didn't have an airbag for the driver.
But being a 95 plate, it does.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. What a nice car. I'll just see under the bonnet. Remind people, because I haven't asked this question on camera, how much you paid for this car and when you bought it.
Yeah, well, this was one of my better purchases, if I may say so. It was purchased back in 2008.
Yes.
And I paid the princely sum of £375.
300?
It had 11 months MOT and a nearly full tank of petrol at the time. So it was an absolute bargain of a car that anyone could have bought. But, you know, these cars didn't have a high level of desirability. Do you want me to prove it runs?
Yes, please.
Yeah.
Just before anybody disproves. Unbelievably nice. Superb.
It's so thirsty, I'll switch it off.
It's so thirsty you had to switch it off after about 30 seconds.
So they say, but I'll still get 32 to the gallon.
Yeah, exactly. 32 to the gallon, which, I'm not being funny, I get that in Beatrix on a long run. So, yeah, that's cracking. And the first thing the viewers will probably notice with that engine is the rocker cover gasket. It's weeping a little bit at the back, but at the front, I usually see them covered in absolute gallons of oil. There is one thing that I have to point out, and I'm going to put a picture on my camera of this particular item. And this early 600, it's not something you would recommend people look at unless you're prepared to deal with one issue to do with the ABS. What is that?
Right, so these earlier models, pre-1996, have a Honda derived ABS system, and they can be an Achilles heel of the car. It's a bit of a nerdy thing, but there is a separate accumulator on the ABS system filled with nitrogen gas under high pressure.
Right.
And after 20 odd years, a bit like one of our hydrogas suspension spheres, they lose gas, and that can throw up fault codes, and ultimately it can end the life of the car. Because you can't buy.
I suspect that's probably what's happened here when you said that. Second-hand ones, they're just going to have the same issue. There's no way of actually.
And even brand new ones on the shelf have been there 20 odd years.
And Honda have not done anything on this side. There's been no refurbishment process, nothing that you can get up. No, nothing. So, yeah, the key is early cars. You kind of have to watch out for that. I don't think there's anything massively different about the early cars to watch out for, apart from.
Other than that, no.
No. It's a real shame that
is a pity.
It is a pity, because I can imagine a lot of these actually going to the scrap because of this issue.
Yeah.
Just over some weird ABS system. So really summing up your Rover 600 ownership in general.
How easy it has been and how cost effective it has been. For a start, the car was so cheap to buy.
Yeah.
It hardly ever goes wrong. One needs to budget for some mid-term welding because they do rust around the rear arches.
Yeah.
But we're talking, you know, some low hundreds of pounds. It's not a fortune.
It's nothing. That's absolutely nothing.
So, you know, rather than swap your wheels for some alloys, get your welding done if you've got a 600.
Yeah,
because
exactly.
it'll need to be done.
Yeah.
So yeah, ease of ownership. They are, if anything, boringly reliable. You could almost get into it and say, I'm sick of this car. I'm so bored of it. It's never gone wrong.
No.
You know,
and
that's a dream ticket.
Yeah,
actually,
exactly.
For a budget-conscious person,
you can have a lot of fun
who
for
needs a backup car. You know, while the other ones are kicking their legs up occasionally, this one, it never fails me.
Yeah, exactly. The maximum amount of fun for the least amount of income, and I think that's what these cars give. It's just a shame that they're just not valued as such now. Do you think they should be worth more than what they are?
Undoubtedly, they should, simply because it's a Honda Accord under there. And if it weren't for the much despised Rover badge with its Viking ship, people would be thinking, I'm going to buy that car because it's reliable, and I'm prepared to pay for that.
Yeah.
But you know, it's hidden underneath, isn't it?
That's the problem.
Rover.
Yeah, exactly. That's the off-putting factor. It's just what you know underneath, really. Cracking. Right, next car on the line we have. Don't be confused. It is. It's not an Austin Allegro, guys. Just so you know, it's a Vanden Plas 1500, but it's not really a 1500 anymore, is it, Martin?
No, it isn't. I donated an engine from a later car which had a 1750 engine.
Yeah.
It's the engine that you would find in a Maxi.
Yeah.
It wasn't done as an upgrade in performance, it's just that the previous car had an unfortunate end after a violent storm in about 1995.
Oh, great.
When some very large roof tiles fell upon it and disfigured it in a terrible way. But I liked the car enough to find this one that had a broken gearbox.
Right.
Didn't know its forward from its reverse, so to speak. So we put the engine and gearbox out of the later car into this body.
Into here. And this is an E-Series with the AP 4-speed automatic.
That's correct, yeah.
So I was under the impression that the AP was only ever fitted to the sump of an A-Series in the mini automatics.
It's an understandable perception, but I've got the workshop manual for the AP gearbox in here with its schematic diagram, etc. And it differs considerably from the mini gearbox.
I was going to
and
say.
in fact, it's more reliable in service.
That's interesting.
It's not a particularly delightful gearbox, but it soldiers on and they don't tend to go wrong.
That's really interesting.
Whereas the mini ones, as good as they are and as miraculous as it was to make them fit that size, they can be a bit more troublesome than these. Yeah.
As you can see, as we walk down, the colour is astral blue with a really nice decal that goes all the way across, and we've got the lovely Van den Pla hubcaps, which I think is such a classy touch. Definitely sold in low volume numbers, but I think I'm right in thinking these survive in probably just higher number than the Allegros, despite the fact that the Allegros were the mass produced.
I think from a ratio point of view that would be correct, yes. I think considering how relatively few were produced, then a high percentage of them probably still remain, yes.
Right, let's take you in. Now, I want to sit in this because I've never actually sat in one before. Immediately you're invited with lots of, I would say on the cusp of brown, but I reckon this is more of a sandalwood sort of colour. I've been used to this with the P6, even though it was slightly lighter. You get leather seats, a leather bound steering wheel, beautiful, with VP proudly displayed in the centre, with walnut dashboard. This one is nowhere near as good as the one Martyn's got in his cupboard, which you're going to see in a second. Yeah, classy, beautiful touches here and there. I can see why these got desirable. I think about 10 years ago, I imagine you could pick one up for what, £1,000 or so, maybe over.
Probably.
Now today, probably a few thousand for them. So they have gone up a little bit, but I don't know if the recognition is quite there with these cars at the moment.
I suppose it's the right time to tell you how much I paid for this one.
How much?
£163, though that was in the mid-90s.
And they were bangers.
Yeah.
Bangers, banger raced, you name it. Absolutely nothing else.
They came with a free straitjacket because people assumed you were insane.
Yeah, I think so. I think so. Just take you through this interior. Now, ignore the lifting because we have a much better dashboard that Martyn has not installed yet. But we've got just these hot to cold with a clang to cold and another clang for hot. This is quite entertaining. Oh, sorry. And then we've got car, screen and hot. Oh God, this is so fiddly. Hot, off, hold on, that's completely off. Oh, see, this is where I get confused here. We've got the cold and hot for this, but it just says hot off because there's no flipping separation between the two.
I know, the off looks like it's from over there, but it's actually this side,
hot off.
Yeah.
So we've got cold and cold and hot off. Yeah, so that basically means cold and cold, but not cold. I didn't realise. Now this is a funny one, isn't it? So this is the fan switch. It's in the off position, which is the middle position. So to get one, it's the left. Then you have to put it back in the middle to turn it off, and then number 2. How stupid is that? I mean, if you wanted to have the maximum setting, which is 2, that's fine, or just the 1. But if you wanted to go from 1 to 2, you've got to go from off to on and get. Honest to God, what a silly idea that was. I do love this clock. There you go. I think it's a Jaeger. Get the pronunciation right. These are Smith's dials. I was just looking for, and this one is a Smith's made in the UK. So you got your temp, your vaults, quite a nice feature actually in cars this age, and you feel quite nice actually. And this car has done 98,000 miles.
Probably a bit more because the speedometer cable is not working currently.
Ah,
I do have one for it.
Right,
yeah.
so it just hasn't been fitted. That is a common thing with cars this age. If the cable's not being connected, that might lead to things. But honestly, with a car this age, mileage, is it that important?
Not to me, it isn't.
No. Condition.
No.
Pretty much.
If it starts, it's a good thing.
Yeah.
And if it doesn't smoke, it's another good thing.
Yeah, especially with these engines at this age. Yeah, I would definitely say so. Fog. Oh, actually, these are quite nice. I did watch a YouTube video recently where there was a bloke reviewing one of these, and he asked what this S&H means. Oh, come on. Side light and headlight. Come on. Panel. And RDEM. Well, obviously, rear demister. This is the time where they started, you've got your symbols, but you've also still got printed words. So it was a weird sort of time where you still had printed words, but symbols were starting to creep in a little bit, but not quite. We've got a reasonable cubby-sized hole down here with the electrical, well, the heating duct and a load of electrics just down there. You have, obviously, your little cubby, a little bit of an ashtray down there for your passenger. This one is something to do with the braking system. We can't work out why, but it's non-functional on this car. Something to do with a check warning light. Not sure what that is. This one, can't work out what this is either. This is another non-functioning switch.
That's for hazards.
Is that for the hazards?
Yeah.
Ah, I thought it was non-functioning. I didn't realise that. The period radiomobile, that still works. So that's quite a rarity in itself. I know these can be converted for Bluetooth and whatnot, but the truth is, are you going to use it for Bluetooth? No, you're going to buy the car and listen to that engine. It's as simple as that. You've got some rear demister, which doesn't work on this car. It was actually, this should be a blank, but it's just been fitted in at a later date. Fog lamp, exactly the same as well. And this still works, apparently.
It does. You can try it now if you want.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Just push it in and just hold it for 10 seconds.
Cross your fingers. It will.
I can hear it.
No, leave it in.
I think I should just leave it in for a bit longer.
Leave it in a bit longer there.
Just a second, let's get the clock going.
That's it.
Oh, it is smoke. No, it is smoking. It's not red, but it is actually.
Fag, I think.
It is smoking. You could definitely light something in here. I don't approve of lighting fags with this leather. I mean, apart from this, these are it's just like being in a backbencher's car. Seriously. Yeah, you had your Rover P5Bs and all that, but if you wanted to travel in style and you didn't quite have enough money for a P5B, I would recommend sitting in these seats. These are lush and comfortable. And naturally, every single one I've seen has these period delights that are never used. These are only used at car shows for someone to put some fake champagne on. They're not actually used practically.
I'll have you know I've eaten cucumber sandwiches off those tables.
That's a very important fact. Very important fact. That's a clunk and a half. Better get out. I've been warned about something up here. Apparently this bulb is going to set...
You touch that bulb and it'll be quite warm, I can guarantee it.
Ouch. Right, yeah. I think so, actually. I think I better get out the car before it starts melting.
I mean, it is an Allegro after all.
I mean, it's to keep me warm because the heater's probably not that great, to be fair.
So actually the issue is it's a fake remake of a P5 interior light.
Yes.
They were the same
cheaper.
bulb anyway. They used
right.
on these,
Yeah.
But it's an aftermarket version, and the lens can't quite cope with the heat of the bulb.
Almighty. Now, looking over this, one thing that protrudes so much is this grille. They've had to produce this shroud to cover the backside of it because it just sticks up so much. I mean, this is like a period feature, but actually, I don't know about you, but they actually look quite bulbous on these. I know that there's some pristine to having that chrome front, but I actually think it
hasn't dated.
No, it hasn't. I think the ordinary Allegro has actually dated better.
It would be very easy to convert this back to an ordinary Allegro because it's take these screws out here, and
Yeah.
all this just comes off, and your panel behind there is just standard
Oh, it's just-
Allegro,
yeah.
but you'd need a standard bonnet to go with it.
Oh, I say yes, of course, because the bonnet would be
And then your
completely
grille
unique.
insert. But yeah, you could create a, you know,
And sort of
1750
mundane
road.
looking, yeah,
Yeah.
quite fascinating.
Yeah.
We've got the 1750 E-Series engine, which
Indeed.
is, well, I don't know much about E-Series engines, but they're regarded as decent engines.
They're regarded as strong, long-living, inefficient. They have a long stroke to get the extra
Yeah.
cylinder capacity.
Yeah.
And that means they don't like to be revved.
No, not at all.
But actually mated up to an equally lazy automatic gearbox, which
Oh,
is
yes.
the case here. It does make for reasonably relaxed driving.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Have you had any issues with it in your ownership?
Engine-wise, no, because this engine was, of course, from the previous car we had that got
Right.
blasted with
Yeah.
the roof tiles.
Yeah.
And that was used extensively back in the 90s by my wife, who used to design kitchens. And she drove about all the Midlands in the car with this engine in it, i.e.
fab.
this particular engine.
Yeah.
Never did it fail. One failure we had, which was simply a broken accelerator cable, and
Oh, it's just simple.
Even then, the thing wanted to creep under its own steam without any gas pedal. You know.
Gosh,
Yeah.
unbelievable. No, I don't know a great deal about this configuration, to be fair, because to be fair, I think it's the AP gearbox is the only automatic gearbox to use the engine's own oil to work.
Yeah, other than the
Just ridiculous. Yeah, apart from the Mini
yeah,
and the
yeah,
A-Series. I don't know how they got it to work so well, but they're not...
It requires quite a lot of oil.
Right.
It's nearly 9 litres.
That's a lot of
Yeah,
oil.
yeah.
Okay, that's a constant topping up exercise.
Yeah.
But look at the access you have down here, and it's all extremely solid. I'm assuming you've had all the hydrogas spheres done by the look of it.
Yeah, because any hydrogas car of this vintage will have rock hard suspension unless you get that done.
So presumably, if the ride height it's not a simple case of pumping the suspension up and you're good. You could have perfectly level suspension,
And I'll
but
admit, I did that in the past.
Right.
I had someone round with the pump up kit.
Yeah.
Just to get the ride height looking appropriate,
Uh-huh.
and I thought that was job done. But then I began to wonder why the ride was so rock hard if these cars were supposed to be built for comfort. And of course, I've learned since that there's more to it than just ride height.
say you're not going to get the best out of them if they're not being done, I suppose. I mean, how much is it? If you want your hydrogas spheres replaced, and I believe it's
Well, I thought
it's
it was
Dawn and
extremely
Lee.
good value, actually.
Yeah.
It depends on location, and because I was living
Yes.
in an easy to get to
Yeah.
location,
Yeah.
I paid around £650.
That's absolutely
And if you
nothing.
consider what it would cost you to replace all 4 of your standard shock absorbers on a car,
Yes.
and potentially other components at the same time, like top mounts, etc.
Yeah, yeah.
Then really, I thought that was absolute steal.
Yeah, I can't believe that. And
With the
to be
labour coming with it,
to be
to fit
fitted,
it.
yeah, exactly. The labour, the fitting,
Yeah.
and any problems they may have. I mean, I've Dawn and Lynn, they've basically encountered all the problems you could encounter
They
with
were
these.
an absolute delight to watch as well. It's one of the most entertaining days I've ever spent at my own house with people.
They must have
working
an
in my garden.
abundance of
Fantastic.
nice. Have they? I don't know how many cars they've actually done. How many hydrogas cars?
It
Thousands.
must run into thousands.
Yeah,
now.
must have been.
I don't think even they realised how many hydrogas cars there were hiding away in people's garages.
No. And most of them, the reason they're hiding away is because of the hydrogas problem. I suspect that this is what's killed a lot of these cars off.
Yeah.
And obviously, up until I think it was 6 or 7 years ago, you couldn't refurbish them. That Dawn and Lee, they hadn't discovered a way of refurbishing in them. So if you had hydrogas problems, well, you're stuck.
Yeah.
And I suspect that's why a lot of hydrogas cars have gone the way of the
The
wind.
key change, of course, being the addition of this, only one word to use, nipple on the end.
Yes.
Which means that you can, after a period of time, let's say 10, 15 years, that's where you reintroduce the nitrogen gas.
I
So
see.
that would not have been there on the standard
and
production
they've,
item.
they've found a way of sealing that and
found it,
adding
yeah,
that
exactly
at the top.
That. It's all about the seal.
So now these are just going to require new nitrogen in situ,
Yeah.
assumingly.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
there's no other problem with
Yeah.
them.
Yeah.
That is incredible. That's probably saved a lot of cars, a lot of BL cars, and I am a really favour of this suspension.
And I would say to more or less anyone with either an Allegro or another hydrogas vehicle, if yours hasn't been done, I wouldn't wait forever, because you have to have the units to refurbish, and at some point they'll be all gone.
Yeah, exactly. They will be. It's not it's nothing's irreplaceable, and I think future-proofing these cars for as long as possible. I mean, you've done that with this. I think that really is the main point, preserving them for as long as possible. We are custodians.
We are.
You know, all these cars here today, if we want them to last, we are just custodians. And I know I say that quite unselfishly, because, you know, people do consider what's best. Obviously, you've got to consider what's best for you at this moment, but also something like this that is desirable. People do want them now. I think Allegros are more popular than they've ever been.
It's a piece of nostalgia, isn't it?
It's
you
pure.
can't really
No.
build a justification case for driving a car that A, looks like this, you know, because you can see it's pretty shabby in places, most places in fact, but it offers a driving experience that is completely different to the vehicles that we've seen so far in my little fleet, because they benefit from 20 years of technological change.
Yeah,
whereas
exactly.
this is really simple stuff.
Yeah, completely simple. Love it. Perfect. That smell of petrol and oil. Now, we're going to leave this, and I'm just going to show you some of the bodywork, although you don't want me to show all of it, do you, Martyn?
I'd rather you hear it running. That's more remarkable than the
Yeah,
bodywork.
we could actually hear it run first. That'll be grand.
Let's hope so.
Well, touch wood on that one. This will be embarrassing if this doesn't come off. I'll edit it, don't worry. First time. And that is a cold start. First time on the choke. I don't know about you, but that sounds sweet as a nut. E-Series engines have always been known as sort of kind of average cast iron lumps that bellow smoke out, but there's nothing wrong with this one and this engine. It's never been apart. Clang. Right, that's done. Bye-bye, sir. Now, some of you would have spotted this at the start of the video and like, nah, forget all this lot. This. Now, this is, I will tell you now, an extremely rare car. And I told Martyn the good news when I did a bit of digging about basically what is a Mini Minor Mark II 1000 Traveller automatic. There seems to be a bit of a theme going on with Martyn's cars, but Martyn, like myself, you like automatics, the smoother, relaxed.
I do, and my late wife only drove automatic, so
There you go.
the Rover 75 is the only manual car I have.
Yeah. I agree with that sentiment, and like the Allegro, we've got an AP 4-speed gearbox again, but with an A series in its rather the sort of configuration that I was aware about. I wasn't aware that the E series was ever fitted to the AP before today, so that's something I've learnt today. This is the only one from 1968, as some of you will notice by the registration. 1968, it's the only one. That's it. It's unique, being a steel-bodied Traveller with slidey windows that you get on Mark IIs, with the exterior door hinges, and just beautiful look at the front. And it is a Morris, so we get the slatted front grille as usual, and it's in really good condition from what I see, but Martyn told me it was rather scabby in some places, but you know, a few areas here and there. This is usual, is it not? But how long have you owned this car for?
It's around 26 years that I've been proud to be the custodian of this car.
Yes.
I don't consider myself an
No,
owner.
you
as
never
we have
are.
said.
No.
It's been a privilege to try and look after it as best I can.
Yeah, exactly. How much did you pay for it?
Exactly £1,000.
Oh, £1,000 for 1,000 Mini Traveller.
That's me pushing the boat out. That's the most expensive car here, isn't it?
Yeah, by a mile,
Yeah.
by a mile. None of these cars cost anywhere near as much. And what, 26 years ago? So we're talking 90s when Minis were still cheap.
Yeah.
But these ones, being really early ones, would have probably not very. I don't think they'd have been
At the
particularly
time,
valuable.
that purchase price was regarded as the going rate for one of these. It was neither particularly cheap nor particularly expensive.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So, if we walk up, we have, let's say, there's just bits and pieces here, but it's more or less as it was. It's not ever been preserved, restored. Restored, I should say, is the word.
A cheap respray 20 odd years ago.
Cheap, hence why I can see everything starting to sort of come through a little bit on the gutters, but it's still held up. I mean, the roof actually is held up pretty well, considering this is kept under a car cover naturally. Not everyone has the. I will say this before some people are going to start commenting saying, oh, he's parking his cars on grass. If you actually see down here, Martyn's put tarpaulin, and then this. What is this, like a plastic matrix?
It's a grid that you're meant to put gravel into.
Right,
One day I
okay.
will, yeah, before
Yeah.
I die. Yeah.
That's fine. But see, it's not parked on grass, so we're not going to have any issues. And honestly, the underside of this is solid. It might be scabby, the paintwork might be bad, but it's solid. It's as simple as that. This one is solid. I mean, you've just had some welding done to the floor pans.
I've had 2 rear floor pans on both sides.
Yeah.
And not too long ago, it had a front floor panel as well. So it's extremely solid. Yeah.
Yeah. So underneath, everything is the best thing is everything's been done underneath, so it's usable. I mean, I was going to say safe then, but really, Minis. You don't buy Minis for safety. You buy them because they're fun, you know, and you can somewhat use them, but not as usable as what you might imagine. Not in today's traffic. Well, at least that's my impression anyway. Getting it out has been difficult, would you say, for a while?
You just feel, given that we've identified it's one of a kind.
Yes.
If it's to remain one of a kind, the less exposure to the harsh environment of the great British public and the near misses that we unfortunately always have, I'd be reticent to take it out very often.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I have that same mindset as well. I think the nicer they become, the more rarer, the less you want to use them. You just want to take. This is a car like any other car, exactly like this car, and I think the 600 and the 45s. I think they're basically the sort of cars that you want to take to places, shows, meets, where people are going to appreciate them. And you will be seeing more of this car in the future, because I think we're determined to get this to a local show. We've got a few that we've earmarked, and it will be a pleasure to be even a passenger in this, because this is just something that I never thought I would experience. I've never actually not even got close to a Mark II or Mark 1 so far on this channel. And look at the space inside here. I assume this was for milk bottles, wasn't it?
I think so. I reckon you could get about 8 in there.
I think, do you know what? The huge, I would say quite generously sized.
I don't think the hinges would take the weight, but
no. Yeah. Well, I was going to say we've got a bit of plate on the bottom hinge there. Can't really show that, but we kind of have to lift the door up while shutting it. But as you can see here, this is what you want to see. This is, I can tell you, it's the smell of the 60s, everybody. Absolutely gorgeous.
Completely original interiors, no replacement door cards or anything like that.
Nothing. Nothing's been messed about with. We've got a few like additives, like that handbrake. We've got a bit of a cover on that. Again, AP gear lever. What's this?
It's a ring that attaches to a device called an auto lock. They were quite popular in the 90s.
Okay.
As a security device.
Oh,
it
I see.
Slides over the handbrake. Means it becomes it's a physical deterrent.
It links the two
device.
together. I've seen something such. It just looks very rudimentary. Yeah. Very much so. I love it how it's just sitting randomly there. It looks so dainty. It looks like you could actually break the damn thing. My complaint is, I'm just going to sit in the car because I did kind of had a bit of a shut around. Now I'm 6'3", guys, and my feet, right, left foot just there. Now I've got big feet, I would say, but I've got this problem where accidentally you could press both the gas and the brake pedal at the same time, so it can get quite dainty. I think you have to be kind of accurate with your foot placement.
You get used to it. You do get used to it.
And obviously the steering wheel, when you sit in a Mini, for those who've never done this, and this is an early one, so we've got there's no steering column, there's nothing to it, it's a stick that goes down into the floor, and you can kind of see that I'm not sitting straight. I'm sitting like this, steering wheel is slightly to the left. That's a Mini thing. It's a Metro thing. You do get used to it. You kind of veer towards the middle. And here, anybody who's owned a Mini R50 or new will kind of recognise this as this is the original version. And they did a good job in the Mini R50 of replicating this original structure, temperature gauge, speedo, fuel, and oil pressure. Very, very important on these early cars. But what strikes me is the amount of space that you have in here because there's no dash. I've just been used to Minis with a dash that sticks out as far as here, and then we've got air conditioning, heater pods, and everything else that goes around down here. But the amount of space in here, it's just tiny, this car. And I mean, you are kind of sitting near the floor, but you have no sense of being crammed in. I know that people go on about this a lot, but Alec Izagonis really was a genius. And his team must have worked so hard to just basically, I think they must have just sat 4 people down in a couple of chairs and thought, right, now we're going to draw a car around them and see how small we can make it. Because I think that's exactly what's gone on here. Again, choke, which works quite well. And is this the heater bypass?
Yeah, that one doesn't work quite well.
Oh, okay. I will leave that where it is.
Push and pull it under the bonnet to get it to go.
Right, okay.
Stiff, you know.
It's a bit stiff, or have it, that typical. Oh, is that the heater valve that sits on the block on the top of the?
Yeah, it's to get like heat or not heat into the car.
Right, okay.
So when it's pushed in, you get heat.
Yes.
When it's pulled forward, you in theory don't get heat, but you still do.
Ah, okay.
Something from the heater, I think.
We discovered a parts number down here. So apparently this has been down here for 50 years.
Well, 55 years.
55 years.
Yeah.
It's still there, stuck to the loom. I mean, just putting you under here. That's your loom, guys. There's just absolutely nothing down here. Ah, seriously. This apparently is the original carpet.
That is, yeah.
Which someone's been putting their heel in a particular spot, as usual. And this is sort of, let's just come out of an 850.
That's actually quite a much more modern carpet. That's come out of a Mini 30.
The 30th anniversary.
Because the colour looked about right.
Yeah, it's almost literally spot on.
Oddly, it's a left-hand drive Mini 30. So it's got the heel pad in the
right place. Yes, hence why we've got that there. Yeah. Okay, that's a bit random.
See, Martyn's budget at the time was £5, and that's what that carpet cost me. £5.
Brilliant. No, but you know what? This is. I think you'd pretty much say that this is the prized car of.
It has to be. Really. Yes, it has.
Because of how rare it is, what its value is. So you've had to put the money to get things done.
I mean, you were talking about that piece of carpet there.
Yes.
I always think to myself, that piece of carpet was put there before Neil Armstrong set foot on the moon.
That is, yeah, it's true.
It's quite a long time ago.
Why would you get rid of that?
Yeah.
Just because it's slightly worn. Yeah. And I think that's something that you have to accept. Now we're going to just kind of lift that up. It hasn't shut properly. It's difficult to shut, that is. Yeah. Now, we've got the back doors open. Yeah, so we can see in here. Now, we've had, this is some nice luggage space in here. And it just wears the stickers, including that as well. It just wears its history. Look at this. There's nothing, absolutely nothing. We've got this low lugger underneath, spare wheel with a decent tyre in there by the look of it. Just dusty and dry, and that's what you want to see, dry and dusty, with 1 wire, 2 wires for the back lights, and that's it. I can understand why quite a few people bought these, and I think these were kind of marketed as the family car, a practical family car. It weren't just for businesses. I think there was a bit of a mixture. Absolutely gorgeous.
The brochure for the car at the time described them as lovable, so I think they knew what they had created at the time.
Yeah.
It does have a lot of character, not just now, but at the time as well.
Superb. You can see that.
The stickers on the windows that you mentioned, they do date back to my own travels. On the other door, you know, you'll see a Llandudno sticker, and Devon on the other one. And those aren't retro ones, those are from the 90s when you could still buy those stickers.
Just open the bonnet, front release catch. Now, to my untrained eye, that is the original grille. That's quite rare to find, actually. I think these grills are quite unobtainable.
Yeah, they're as rare as the proverbial hen's teeth and the other mentionable stuff.
Which is why you've secured another one just in case.
Yeah.
That's a really nice item. It does seem to pit quite easily.
Yeah.
They're made for, is it this Mazak or something? It looks like monkey metal to me. It just pit really badly. There's no way that can be refurbished.
Not without large cost, so that's why I bought the other one.
Yeah, exactly.
In case I ever need to make it perfect.
No,
you know.
exactly. Yeah. Love this. Beautiful. Absolutely gorgeous. But this is what you've come to see, guys. I am bending down because it's like that. I suspect that someone's had their head taken out a few times in the past. But we have a 1000cc A series 998, well, I should say, with an AP 4-speed gearbox in the bottom, and it starts pretty easily. Martyn's just going to demonstrate that. As easy as that. Dynamo working off there with a coil and points. Obviously the later Minis have their heater tubes in the inner wing. That doesn't look like a HS2. It's a 4?
It's a HS4, yeah.
So
as fitted to automatics.
Oh, so they didn't get the HS2 at all?
No.
Right,
no, they
bit more
that
grunt.
To the automatics to try and compensate for the slight lack of BHP that was being sapped by the gearbox.
Yeah, yeah, because there would be some power losses.
You still end up with about 38 BHP, not a lot.
That runs like a Swiss watch on tick over. You've done a bit of painting as there, I can see, just a little bit.
Perhaps, yeah.
Just a little bit. Just wears its history so well. Throaty. Runs like a Swiss watch. That is astonishingly beautiful. I mean, you bought this for £1,000 24 years ago as a bit of fun.
Yeah.
Did you ever imagine that this would be worth or valued as it is today?
No, indeed, I didn't really think it should be. I don't think I welcome the fact that it is. It's never been about the money for me. It's all about the car.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think ownership becomes more difficult, actually, if your car is worth more money.
Yeah, I think so. You don't want to drive it as much. Yeah. You're constantly scared about, well, mainly with these, security, damage, particularly with the way people drive these days. It's sad, but it is the reality. The nicer they become, the less you want to use them.
It's funny that earlier on we were saying certain cars should be worth more money because of their intrinsic abilities, I would
Hence
argue that
these.
these shouldn't be worth the money that they are.
No, that's actually quite relative. And this was deliberate, actually, to leave this to last. It's the oldest, the most valuable. Probably will get the most interest, but actually, should it? Really? Not really, because I'm not being funny. The cars that are on the road, the 75, your 45, my 45, they're the most usable. They're the least valuable. Obviously, they haven't got to that age where people want to own one, or just have that nostalgia feel to them. Although I'd say that's starting to kick in. It is kind of a generational thing, and these hit that nostalgia front about 10, 15 years ago. But still, for the cost of one of these, I'd still have a more modern car. I just think 90s, noughties cars seem to be just that little bit more usable. They are not that valuable. And then you've got that, the fact is, because they're not valuable, you want to use them more. Is there something you can add to that, really?
Comes down to a choice of, in my situation, would I want one of these or all of the others? Because this is worth more than all of the others put together, which is ridiculous, isn't it?
It is, for the size of car and what you're getting. I mean, essentially, some people would argue what you're getting is a solid piece of history, that this is a one-off. There's no. This is the only 1968 Morris Mini 1000 automatic Traveller. That's it. It's quite a little bit of a combination there, and being the automatic, I suspected when I looked it up on the vehicle statistics, which is where I got the information from Martyn. There's just nothing. There's literally none of them left. For various reasons, mainly rust, lack of use, probably the gearbox is packing up, a combination really. But overall, this is a fantastic bunch of cars, and I shall be seeing more of these in the future. And thanks, Martyn.
It'll be a pleasure.
Seriously, thank you for showing me these wonderful classics and just having a go over and just having a laugh at the same time. We've had a real laugh today. What you guys don't really see is I've been here how long? 7 hours, 8 hours, and this video will probably be an hour long. And we've just talked cars for ages, and that's what this is about.
And eaten burgers.
And eaten burgers, that's more important. And that brings me to the last thing in this video. Before we go, we are going to see all these cars, hopefully individually, because they're all in various states, but they've all been kept nice. And every single one of them start on the button. As we've seen in this episode, they all run. You know, the Rover 600, I think it's failed the MOT on just a bit of welding.
Yeah, it's booked in.
That's it. That's booked. Yeah. This has been welded, and obviously it's MOT exempt, but it will pass an MOT because it's just, there's nothing wrong with it. The Allegro, MOT exempt again, tax exempt, but solid. Yeah. There's not much wrong with it. That would fail an MOT. And then the 45 and the 75 naturally are just going concerns that don't really cause any issues. So this is Martyn's World of Budget Classics. Cars that are run on a budget. There's no garage, just car covers. There hasn't been, and for those of you who say can't put car covers on these cars, they blister. I don't think so. We've not had that with any car down here. Usually the blistering, I think the Allegro's got more paint defects because of bad paint, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was prior treatment that, you know, didn't work very well. Nothing to do with the covers.
No, absolutely. So really, Martyn works within his limits, and I think there's quiet corners where people just have to do this because of the cost of storage and everything else. And having your car right next to your house, it's just nice. You can keep an eye on them. You don't have to travel for miles just to change a dizzy cap or whatever, or get it out the garage. It's here, and that's what I love about what I do, having my cars close.
I must admit, every time I glimpse one through one of the windows, I do get a bit of a grin factor. Yeah.
You always will. Yeah. Anyway, let's go and finish this video with something quite interesting in the garden. Vanden Plas 1750 and 1500 owners, do not look at this. New old stock, picked up for, how much did you pay for it? £15. It's brand new. It's just no lifting on that whatsoever. I don't think you'll ever fit it. I don't think you'll ever want to fit it. That's absolute gold dust. Maybe after the car's been resprayed a little bit. Maybe. We'll see. But what a steal.
I'll tell you what, I'll leave it to someone in my will.
There you go.
Yeah.
That's a very good idea.
Yeah.
Well, we've got a spare CVT gearbox because we know how dreadfully awful they are, because you need a spare one. Not. This, I think, you'll never use this. I don't think you'll ever need to use this. No. It's just an insurance policy, I think. Yeah. Or was it £150? £150 for a spare gearbox for the 45.
Of course, we know that if that had been sold as one for a MG step speed, it would have been £500.
Far more, yes.
Even though it's the same item.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Same gearbox. Just because it's a Rover, it must be cheaper. Isn't. The MG people have been stunned. Now, I've just we've had burgers off this thing here, and you might notice it's got a good name. Yeah, it must be a Maestro because it's got some rust on it. Yeah, that's a very, very good. That's a very good griddle. I like that. And this is where actually, hold on, isn't it sprayed up in that colour?
Yeah, azure blue. Yeah,
azure blue. Honestly. Brilliant.
Just haven't decided what model it is yet.
Yeah. Is it going to
HLS, LX?
Well, if you put some chrome strips, we could put Van den Pla right next to it. Yeah, exactly. So, you know, but it's manual, isn't it? You have to manually do it, so we can't have automatic stickers. Right, we're going to leave that here, and thanks to Martyn. See you all very soon.